Greetings, everybody. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of a new series covering Synergy. If you would like to skip the game's overview or the details of this series, please use YouTube chapters, and more information can be found in the description of this video. Synergy is a relaxing city builder where humanity must adapt to ever-changing alien ecosystem in a strange and hostile world. Explore and analyze your environment to make use of its resources and find ways to live with the hostility of nature through Synergy. The stream will be a mix of Let's Play and tutorial, and it will also air on YouTube. I am going to be starting off as like a full tutorial. I'm going to play the game's tutorial, but I have played before. It's an early access game and can be found on Steam, and there's currently only 2 scenarios that are playable, but more on the way. And you guys are going to be able to vote for some important decisions throughout the stream. Let's do a new game here. There is the tutorial, which I'll be starting with, the story and the sandbox. And as I mentioned, the story has 2 different scenarios currently. I would say there's maybe 10-12 hours of gameplay or so in its current state. A group of exiles who were driven out of the dried-out oasis that had protected them until then needs to recover despite their meager resources. However, the climate challenges them at every turn, and the desert is full of strange and dangerous mysteries. And then, as far as score goes, within 40 years, if I win, it's bronze. If I win with 1,500 points, it's silver, and 2,500 points, it's gold. For the tutorial, I'm not necessarily going to be too concerned about score. I just want to get through the tutorial so we can start the story scenarios. But without the proper tutorial, you guys would be lost. For 2 generations, our community lived in an oasis protected from hazards of the outside world. But, like everywhere else, we were driven out of our homes. All is not lost. After crossing a sea of sand, we reached the shores of some new lakes. No matter how toxic their water is, it will be pure bliss for us if we can treat it. Your citizens need clean water to survive. To get it, you will need to build a pontoon so your citizens can draw toxic water from a lake with special tanks. Toxic water must be treated and purified in a purification basin to become clean water that your citizens can drink. All collected resources must be stored. In the water tower, clean or toxic water. In the cellar, food or clean water. And in the small warehouse, all other resources. Move the camera to the water hole, which is over here, this green gooey thing. And let's build a pontoon and a purification basin and a water tower. So the pontoon is a dock for water collection. And the water purification cleans it. And then we have a water tower. And I'll add all of that in. Okay. You can speed up the time if you want to, but I don't want to. Leave it as is. So this is the standard map tile. And as you can see, I'm going to pause just a second. There's not a lot of strategic resources on this tutorial map. Now, the game doesn't really cover too much of the UI, but I'm not going to get ahead of the tutorial. I'm going to fill in the details once the tutorial is over, and I start on the first scenario if there's any details that I feel have been left out. Additionally, there's a lot of overlays and settings obscured from the player that get enabled throughout the tutorial, so I don't even have access to show you everything anyway. So the pontoon is done. And here are the goals in the top right. And in order to start collecting toxic water, I can hire citizens as collectors. Oops, it's not the button I meant to hit. And now we're waiting on the water tower and the purification basin. The paths that you can build are free and increase citizen mobility considerably, so they're definitely worth interconnecting your structures with roads. In this water tower, I only want it to store toxic water. I want the clean water to be stored more where people live. So this will just be toxic water holdings. And I'm building actually 2 purification basins instead of 1. Because I would like to double the amount of purified water that we have. And there we go. Assign citizens to the pontoon and purification basin, already done. We now own infrastructure to treat water, as well as a healthy and sustainable irrigation system. However, seasons come and go, hectic and harsh, and we risk a disaster if we don't collect enough supplies for immediate consumption. To keep our buildings running smoothly, we must store enough clean water to prepare for a drought. Getting clean water is essential for the city's survival and development. The scarcity of water means the growing needs of the population need to be balanced with the supply, means, and climatic conditions. Certain climate events, such as dry season, can be fatal for unprepared cities, as water supplies means are slowed down or even stopped. Fortunately, you can check out the upcoming weather conditions in the interface, which shows the weather forecast for the current and future cycles. A cycle is a period of 40 days. All of this information is displayed near the speed controls. So here, it is a temperate season, and on the horizon is 3 more temperate seasons. So it's going to be temperate season for like 120 days plus. Collecting some additional water, it does want me to build a second purification basin. So I'm glad I already started that. And then to collect 20 clean water. That's the current goal. So this second purification basin is getting built, and I'm setting it up near the pontoon to reduce carry distance, and then also near the water tower, which stores toxic water only. Now, there's a lot of building proximity and synergy settings in research that get unlocked later on. So there are ideal positions for things like purification basins. So for instance, there is a research that you can unlock to make them more efficient when they have adjacent access to water, which is why I set my purification basins up on the waterfront. In the tutorial, I don't think that you actually get access to that specific research, but that's why I built it where I did, almost as a force of habit, because I'm used to not the tutorial. Alright, so now we have 2 citizens working on purification, 4 working on the collection of toxic water. The purification basins work in batches of 20, so it takes 20 toxic water to be stored before they can run a batch of purification. And we just have to wait for this 7-day cycle to finish in order to get the toxic water to be clean. And you can see the little worker here sitting in the basin. Looks almost like he's fishing. So I'll speed time up now that I'm waiting for the water clean cycle. I really like the art style as well. Absolutely. I like a lot of the game mechanics of this game, which is, well, happens to be why I picked it for today. So in the top left, you can see that I have 0 clean water. So I have enough clean water for Well, I don't have any clean water, but my citizens drink 33 units of clean water per 40 days. Just gives you an idea. Also, I don't have any cooked meals. So there we go. Finish the collect some water. The oasis's inhabitants have slept for too long under the stars, with only an expanse of canvas to protect them from the extremes of the climate. We need to provide shelter in sustainable buildings. For that, we'll need materials, as well as a warehouse to store them. Heaps of rock that can potentially meet our needs can be found all over the area. Let's use them wisely. Building requires resources, which can be obtained in various ways. The simplest method is to collect them directly from the map to get the necessary ingredients. The Rip Out action is available in the Fast Actions panel. It allows you to collect resources and plants from the map. Use this method to collect rock from rocky amalgams. Start by finding and collecting rocky amalgams on the map. Also, think about building a small warehouse to store these resources. So down here, we have this rocky emanation, which creates these rocky amalgams. And I can hit F, as in Foxtrot, and rip out the rocky amalgams to collect stone from them, which will allow me to then build stone houses. We also need one warehouse. So I am going to set the warehouse up here. And I'm going to create a path over towards the rocky amalgams so that any person sent to collect the rocky amalgams at least has a pathway back to this small warehouse for speed. There's a lot of other things that you can rip out. We need to analyze the fauna, or rather the flora, in order to figure out what can be gained from the different actions that you can take. And that is a huge part of this game. So I've already collected 30 boreal rock from the rocky amalgams. It sits here until it's hauled in. And then we need to build the small warehouse, which I can hit as a priority. If you ever miss any part of the tutorial, you can always replay it with these buttons here as well, if you want the text again. And it's also worth noting that most resources have multiple different ways to collect them. I can think of at least 3 or 4 different ways to collect stone. So if you fully exploit a resource on your map tile, there might be alternative methods to obtain that strategic resource. All right, the small warehouse, speed up until that's built. Citizens need a roof over their heads to protect them against rough weather and to live in decent conditions. Your citizens will go to their homes regularly to nourish themselves, eat, drink, and sleep, which makes the positioning of houses quite strategic. When they nourish themselves, citizens consume food and clean water. These resources are directly drawn from a nearby cellar. This is why houses must be positioned within the range of a cellar. To nourish themselves, citizens also need cellars to have clean water and food. All storage requires 20 units of each default resource type. In the storage interface, it is possible to change the number of required resources or even refuse a resource. This can help to determine where resources are stored or preventing citizens from consuming certain foodstuffs. Since all resources must be carried by citizens from one structure to another, it is important to have enough citizens that are not assigned to a building and are, therefore, available as carriers. Citizens naturally prioritize your direct orders, and then the tasks they consider most important. However, you might make any order to building a priority. For instance, all of your citizens will prioritize bringing and collecting resources from a building marked as a priority. So for instance, if you are low on food, you can prioritize your kitchen so that your people haul food to the kitchen more quickly. Now it says, build a cellar and position houses within the range of it. So here is a cellar, and I'm going to build it here. And then there's 3 different types of houses. There is stone houses. There are stone houses also made of bark, and stone houses also made of tree trunks. And I'm just going to do the regular stone houses. So it wants 3 stone houses within range of the cellar. So there we go. And then if I want this built sooner than later, I can also prioritize it with P or to click the up arrow, as that is now more important than collecting boreal rock. We have plenty of boreal rock. Now on the top of your screen, you have plant resources, natural ingredients, fungal resources, seeds, waste, raw resources like boreal rock, and then composite matters, which is what you would make from like a forge or foundry. So there's a strategic reason why I placed my houses here, but for this specific tutorial it doesn't really matter. These sunshade trees do in fact provide shade, which then lowers the ambient temperature around the houses and makes the houses more comfortable. So setting up your houses near good shade cover can be very helpful to avoid heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Again, not really part of this tutorial, but a force of habit that, because building here, of course, would be much hotter, as there's no shade. And also proximity to water. Water tends to be cooler as well. The overlays to show you ambient temperature are disabled in this tutorial, at least for now. So you wouldn't know that unless you had played before. But for the tutorial, I also don't think it would matter. So now the cellar can store clean water. So I'm going to turn clean water off from the water tower because I'd rather store it in the cellar. This game is too bright. I get it. It is a bright game. Its color palette pops, for sure. And here is a stone house. And you can see the stone house temperature here. It's measured in S. So this isn't Celsius or Fahrenheit. It's just a game-specific. I actually think it's rather brilliant that they just come up with their own temperature scale. So the outside temperature is 33 degrees. The building's resistance is 15 degrees. The inside temperature is 18 degrees. Citizens may heat stroke if they eat in a building of 55 degrees or more, and 70 plus is heat stroke guaranteed. So I picked a pretty cool place to build a home compared to what could have been picked. Houses also have a well-being, a social, culture, and knowledge needs. And this factors into the accessibility of research and the total point value for scoring, which will become more relevant later on. Roads around houses aren't all that necessary now. You can't, in other words, you can't box in a home. Like if you have homes in a configuration like this, the center one is still accessible. Because, so the roads allow for citizens to move faster, but they're not required for terrain traversal. You can add them in if you'd like. I mean, it is a relaxing city builder, so there is some leeway. You don't have to min-max like a lot of other games, which is something I particularly like about this game. And then I did mention score. Here is my total score, which is in the center top, which breaks down it's kind of beyond the tutorial point, but I have some basic home satisfactory, so that's why I'm getting a little bit of score here. People like their homes. Okay, stone houses are done. The food we brought with us is dwindling by the day, but picking the strange and prickly fruit growing in the area, not to mention eating it, is risky. Before anything else, we must eliminate any danger related to exploitation of these plants. Although we do not have a lot of scientific knowledge, the Oasis Old Distiller is able to perform basic chemical experiments. Equipping it with a mobile workstation, we could start botanical studies. Additionally, 4 adults have joined the city. Performing environmental analysis with the field laboratory enables you to discover characteristics of nearby plants. Understanding the environment is the only way to get resources without causing your citizens to suffer or destroying the environment. So this is the title of the game, of course, Synergy. The first analysis, the surface analysis, gives you the result of the rip-out action and harvesting actions on plants. Surface analysis only provides information on harvesting actions that are already unlocked. After unlocking the harvesting action, you need to perform a new surface analysis. So I'll explain that. At the moment, I don't have a workstation to be able to pick fruit. So if I analyzed a plant, it would only tell me what I would gain from that plant if I tore it out of the ground. If I wait to build a picking station and then analyze the plant, it will inform me what I would gain from ripping it out of the ground, and also if there is fruit to be picked. Because this was a little verbose and a little confusing, so I figured I would clarify. To be available to citizens, harvesting actions require a harvest building. When harvesting action is performed on a plant, the latter changes its growing state instead of being destroyed. This action is therefore more sustainable. So I can either rip, this is a cinder plant, rip it out of the ground, or collect it. Not all plants can be collected, but pretty much everything can be torn out of the ground. Also, since the action doesn't destroy the plant, the latter sticks to the harvesting order. Therefore, citizens will interact with the plant each time it reaches the appropriate state of growth. So if you have a harvesting station and you tell them to pick, let's say, 20 plants, as the 20 plants re-ripen, they'll just pick them again. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the picker's cabin and the field laboratory. So the picker's cabin, I am going to set up here. And then the field laboratory, I'm going to set up here. And the game wants me to collect 20 watery pods. Also, we have some homelessness. So while we work on that, I will build some additional homes. I'm also going to prioritize my cellar briefly, because there is not food stored at the cellar at the moment. The food is... Actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't even have food at the moment, so never mind. So here's the field laboratory, which can analyze plants, and here's the picker's cabin, which can harvest plants. So in the field laboratory, I can hire some citizens. I'll hire 2. And then I'll do a surface analysis of different plants in the area. So this looks like it has budding fruit. This is also pretty close by. And I'll analyze the tree. I'll analyze these things on the water. And I'll analyze these whipping gourds. So we're heading over to the Diluvian bush first. And then the cabbage shrub, the sunshade tree, the riverbank fingers, and the whipping gourds. And what this is going to tell me is it's going to inform me what I gain from ripping out and what I'm gaining from picking, because I also have a picker's cabin. We also just entered a new cycle. Still no drive spells on the horizon, which is good. So then the people working in the field laboratory walk out to the Diluvian bush and analyze it, bring it back to the field laboratory, run experiments on it, and determine its properties. One of the other reasons I put the field laboratory where I did is the field laboratory is a scientific building which is producing knowledge, fulfilling knowledge requirements for the homes that are near it. So as you can see, it has a sphere of influence, and depending on the amount of people that I put into the field laboratory, it will increase the amount of knowledge it provides. Does the stone have a picking option? These can only be ripped out. They're not plants, per se. Okay, I have a house for everybody, and then this is an extra house. So we just did the analysis reports. By ripping out the Diluvian bushes, we can collect branches. By picking them, we can collect watery pods. And by trimming them, we can collect branches as well. So if you want a renewable source of branches, you should trim them. If you want watery pods, you should pick them. So then I'm going to put 2 citizens in my picker's cabin and tell the picker's cabin to pick, and then highlight the Diluvian bushes that are around it for picking. I don't, however, want to... I don't necessarily want to pick whipping gourds. Not everything is safe to pick. Some things will hurt you. So it's important to make sure not to misselect. Because, let's say, things have thorns or things are poisonous, you would want to leave those alone. Alright, and now my 2 pickers are going to collect the ripe Diluvian bushes. So here you can see the Diluvian bushes are decorative, fruit-bearing. Let me hide the overlay real quick. Decorative, fruit-bearing. And we can see the rip out, trim, and pick options. There's also other pieces of the information that are hidden to me, like its temperature, water, organic matter, and mineral needs. And this, there's a lot of variables into how healthy a plant is. So, like these Diluvian bushes down here are in poor condition. And if I find Diluvian bushes that are in healthier condition, it means that their environmental, the environment around them is better suited for them. And here's the cabbage shrub. So ripping them out gives vegetables and rotten resources. Picking them gives vegetables and rotten resources. And trimming them provides vegetables. Rotten resources can be used for, like, compost. And now that the field laboratory has analyzed those plants, we can continue with some other things, like the cinder sprouts. And what else is around here? The giant fungus. The sunshade tree can be ripped out for bark and tree trunks. Additionally, I've gone far enough into the tutorial to unlock some views. So there's housing satisfaction, there is well-being, which is like a heat map of where it's nicer to live. There's social, because you're able to build things like canteens and tea bars and the like. Culture, knowledge. So the knowledge here is slightly brighter than the ambient because of the field laboratory. We also have shadow. So shadow is where it's going to be cooler as a result of shade provided by trees. So here's the shadow map, and I built kind of in the center of it. Here's the ambient temperature. So the water is cooler. As you can see, further we move away from the water, it gets real hot. There are some super hot spots here. Like it's 80 there, which would absolutely send people into heat stroke. And then as you get close to the water and into the shade, it gets cooler. There's humidity, which is relevant for plants. Certain plants like certain levels of humidity. So obviously the water itself is 100% humidity. And then some plants like super dry, some like super moist. Organic matter, which is how fertile the soil is. And a lot of plants have their own sort of fertility requirements. And then minerals, how many nutrient minerals are in the soil. And again, plants have their own separate requirements. The only overlay that is still locked is districts, which comes later. We have so far collected 6 of the watery pods. Maybe I'll hire a 3rd picker. Get that going a little faster. And I have 1 open spot in the queue. Is there anything else I haven't analyzed? No. I think there's not a lot of plants in the tutorial mission, so I think I've analyzed almost all of them. Or queued them up for analysis. So here is an example. This sunshade tree is and Diluvian bush are in situations that are so bad for it that it's withering and dying on its own. We almost have all the watery pods needed. Good. Now, one thing to note is if you analyze a plant, so like let's say I analyze this Diluvian bush, it will remove it from the picker's queue, which is just worth noting. So that if you intend to collect, watery pods from it, but then you reanalyze it, you'll have to make sure to pick it again. So here we go. The riverbank fingers give seeds when ripped out, and they die when trimmed. So trimming riverbank fingers just kills it outright. The whipping gourds, when they are ripped out, they give clean water. When they're picked, the picker will get wounded, and when trimmed, they will give plant fibers. So then, if I go back to my picker's cabin, as you can see, there's a giant warning over the whipping gourds not to pick it, because you'll just get bloody and have to go seek medical attention. And then likewise, if I had an extra picker's cabin to queue up trimming, you would see on riverbank fingers that it would give a big alert of just, if you trim this, it will die for no reason. To obtain certain resources, a refining stage might be necessary. For example, tools crafted in the forge or dishes consumed by citizens prepared in the kitchen. Certain versatile production buildings can produce several resources. Production modules allow you to select from the resource to produce and the way to produce it by choosing the recipe to use. This allows you to adapt to the resources available in your environment. So for instance, the kitchen will have a bunch of different dishes that you can make depending on what kind of raw materials that you have available to you, like mushroom soup or stews and the like. A building's production speed depends on its efficiency, which is mainly influenced by the number of active citizens. Recipes can be affected by bonuses or penalties that impact efficiency, cost and resources, and yield. These may come from several sources: bonuses unlocked through research, bonuses due to proximity with other buildings, or bad weather penalties. Build a kitchen and build a forge. Alright. So, I'm going to put a kitchen, let's say, here, right next to my picker's cabin, and a forge down here, adjacent to the small warehouse. And it wants me to cook 40 simple dishes and to produce 10 tools. The other thing I'm going to do with the picker's cabin is I'm going to tell them to start picking the cabbage shrubs as well. They might become too overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have, where they'll just interact with the watery pods rather than the vegetables, but we'll see. Cinder sprouts are too delicate to have many uses, but their bark can be collected as a building material if ripped out or picked, and then if trimmed, it will yield ashy kernels, which is a plant resource for cooking. I also have so many people working as builders that there's not enough carriers to move resources. So I just reduced the amount of people working in the field laboratory because there's only one plant left to analyze, which is the giant fungus plant. I think everything else on this map tile I have analyzed at this point. Thank you for tuning in to Synergy, which originally streamed live on Twitch June 18th. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow city survivors.